Good evening. So what do you say? Andariki namaskaram, right? Okay, good. So everyone try to ask for the session first, right? When people ask for the opportunity, like, hey sir, when you want to be your slot being chosen, right? Unlike others, like I chosen to be last, right? Or at the middle. There are wins and sorry, is it fine? Any better? Okay. So doing at the middle or like close to end of this analysis post pros and cons, right? So first you want to meet up the expectation of the previous speakers. Plus you also need to add value and then not get the audience boring, isn't it? So thanks for being a lovable audience so far. So let's start with a round applause for so far your patience and all the smoothness. So start with the clap, energetic clap. Cool. So when I propose the topic of the bridging the infrastructure code and cloud, right? So the topic I chosen mainly because I was thinking about like what unique selling point I can add when it comes as a speaker, right? So I'm not sure about the MLOps. It's not about the MLOps or language model or all the fancy stuff we have spoken so far, right? But one thing I can guarantee from my session, what you can do is you stay end to end, and then you can add one skill set to your resume. That's something I can guarantee, right? So I think that's most useful for the students. That's why I choose that as a unique selling point for the speech. So now you can ask like, who are you, and why should I, you know, uh, pay attention to the session? So myself, Vasan. So uh, it's broken. So these are some fancy AWS certifications I hold. In my part time, also do run two YouTube channels. 1 minute. Yeah. So one in Tamil, it's Tech Page, and another one is eViday. It's in English. So both around AWS and DevOps part. So if you're focusing towards hands-on based specific, not just theoretical, then it can be a go-to place for you. So without wasting time, like let's start. So how many half of you people have the AWS accounts with you? Raise your hands like if you own your own AWS accounts. Or maybe a quick shout out like, yes, I do have. Do you have? Let's see. In this row, let's say with the left, right. How many of you people have your own AWS accounts? Okay. And how many of you tried doing the hands-on part when it comes to the AWS itself? How many of you have tried the hands-on when it comes to AWS? You have the accounts, that's good. Okay, I could see a couple of hands. Right. So these are the pretty much services, right, which is available more common. And then AWS has been evolving. They come with like more and more service and more technology, being it like Bedrock, which is most hot topic for today, or the ECS, ECR, serverless. So whoever did the hands-on part, how have you made the hands-on part? Is it via UI or is it via coding specific? Did you follow any infrastructure code approach? Maybe let's go for a voting. Like, did it with ClickOps? Like, you went to the console and click next, 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 or you did any way to code it? ClickOps or code? One, two. Maybe we'll have a hearing of word. One for coding and two for ClickOps. You know ClickOps, that you go into the console and then click next, next, and create it. So, what is your experimentation when it comes to AWS? Coding, ClickOps console. Okay. So that's one basic beginner mistake people do, right? So they start with ClickOps and then they stay over there. So where the coding things comes into picture, or the non-ClickOps can come very handy. Any idea where it's going to help you, the way of doing with ClickOps versus the way of doing it with coding? Okay. Um, so the major challenge is going to come is that when you talk about ClickOps, right, you do it in your own account, and when you want to showcase the same work, or when you want to replicate it to the other account, we are going to struggle. you're going to say like, okay, give me some time so that I can set up the Lambda and start the code. Whereas when you go with the infra code approach, you can just go into easily replicate it. So that's a major difference you're going to get and the added advantage when it comes to the infra code and the ClickUp specific way. So any idea like what are the infra code approaches available in current market? Any tooling naming you could think about? The AWS service. So you have CloudFormation. You also have Terraform. So, and then you have other services like Pulumi. So these are the widely used services when it comes to the infra code approach. And today's session, we will talk about Terraform, the best practices, and how you can take you from beginner to the expert level, right? So I will try to cover the basics so that you can confidently say in your resume that, okay, I know Terraform and how I have played with it. So that's the end goal of the session. So whoever wants to be into DevOps, whoever wants to have an additional skill set to the resume, so it's your time to pay attention. So unless other market tools, right, the cloud formation and stuff. So Terraform is going to help you in terms of multi-cloud architecture. So that you build the infrastructure and then you can combine with other clouds, not limited to AWS. Same way, it's not just limited to cloud. So it also have other providers, or even you can, let's say you have a service, you have your own API, and then if you want to provide that as a service, you can also build your own custom providers. So everything starts with a provider. So for example, you go to the website registry.terraform.io as providers, and that's where you can see all the list of the vendors who offers their providers, so that you can use those and then start creating those infrastructure as the code approach. The major thing which people get scared of the keyword infra as code. Thanks for it's extra speakers now. Okay. So the major thing which people get scared of is that with the keyword infra as code, like I'm not aware about the code, like I'm not good at the coding part, like how I'm going to deal with it. So unless coding, so this infrastructure as code is going to help you in terms of building the syntax. It's not that as complex it is. So that's what we are going to simplify it in the today's session. So before starting with the coding or like introduction, let's talk about 4 stages of Terraform. So that this is going to be your key goal. And then if you know this 4, you can confidently say that, okay, I can spin up the resource and then drive it. So the first one is going to be the init stage. So init stage is going to be where, I don't know what happened. So the init stage is going to be where you are going to initialize the providers to a local machine. So when I say providers, let's say you are using a service of AWS, and then it's going to interact backend with the AWS APIs. So that's things is going to happen with the init part. And then you have the plan phase. So that's where you are going to say what changes you are going to perform. Are you going to create a resource? Are you going to destroy the resource? Are you going to modify the existing resources? And then once you do the planning part, that comes the apply phase. So where you're going to say, hey, I reviewed all the changes that's going to happen. So now let's go proceed further and get the changes applied. Let's say I don't want to apply the changes. I want to destroy all the resources. Then you are going to do Terraform destroy. So these are the key stages which you would need to know, like when it comes to like dealing with the Terraform. So you're going to initialize a provider. So you're declaring like what account, what APIs you are going to deal with, and then you're going to do the planning, and then you do the apply change, and then if you don't want, you can destroy the stuff. So where all these things is going to get tracked, because we are going to track the changes of the infrastructure, right? So that's where it comes something called as the state file. So the state file is going to be storing all the infrastructure details. It's generally stored in a JSON format. And then you can place this state file generally in a cloud storage or GitHub or other centralized location, so that, you can do a collaborative work with the team. So to avoid the conflict of work, let's say there can be like more than 2 members in a team, and then they're going to do the changes for the infrastructure. How can I ensure that there is no conflict of the changes, right? So let's say team A is going to name the bucket from A to B, and the another team member B is going to rename it. So how am I going to do it? So that's where the concept comes of state file locking comes into picture, so that at a time only one change will be going into place, and then any parallel changes will be kept on hold unless the previous change gets completed. And then when the next set change comes into picture, it's going to do the plan phase. And then once you're happy with it, you're going to agree for the apply phase. And then the journey of implementation of infrastructure as goes go on. So I told you we're going to talk about code, but then it's not literally code. It's going to be simplified code. That's the promise I made, right? So how the file structure is going to look like is, you have a file, and then all the files would end with an extension .tf, like how a txt file ends, a Word file ends. Likewise, for the Terraform, it's going to end with a file .tf, and you can have as many files within the folder with the extension tf. It doesn't matter like what you name it. You can call Watson, you can call MDU, you can call AWS Superhero, whatever the name you want. But in real world, you would make it more logical. Let's say if I'm going to create an EC2 resource, I would name it as EC2TF. If I'm going to declare a provider for provider TF. So that's the basic stuff you would naming of the file structure comes into picture. And in Terraform, everything is a blocks. So we call it as blocks. So the provider is going to be a provider block. The resource, it's going to be called as a resource block. And then the locals, you're going to define as a locals. And then the output is going to be output block. The variable is going to be variable block. So just keep it in mind. It does, is anywhere in the world looks like a code? Is anywhere in this world it looks like a code? You deal with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. No, right? It's syntax. It just confuse people with the keyword infra code, and then people try to refrain from giving an attempt of like how to deal with it. So where it's going to be useful. So one is in terms of I told you can recreate your infrastructure, manage your infrastructure, and then share your work to the outworld as a student, right? So for this, let's take an example of your website, right? So this is your website, www.asia, right? So let's say, so currently your college only in India, but still you chosen the keyword of .asia. Let's say your college is opening a branch in, let's say, Australia or somewhere else, and then they want a new domain name called www.mbu.india to exclusively specify. So if you know AWS services to launch your website, right? So you might be having a service called CloudFront, the CDN service, and then mapping it to a load balancer, and then that gets routed to the S3, and then again the load balancer comes into picture, and then you go with auto scaling group, and the routing takes place. So if I want to launch a new domain, then I'm going to recreate the same infrastructure, right? Like the Route 53, CloudFront, and S3 bucket, load balancer, auto scaling group. So in Terraform concept, so everything is treated as a resource. So Route 53 DNS record is a resource. CloudFront distribution is a resource. S3 bucket to host the static files is a resource. And load balancer separate resource. Auto scaling group, EC2. Everything will be considered as a separate resource. So what I can do is, let's say if I come up with a use case that, hey, I want to replicate the same thing, instead of .asia, I need a new domain for .india. That's where the core concept of Terraform comes into picture, which is the concept of module, where you modularize your template. Let's say to launch an EC2 instance or to build up a domain, I can template it, and then by just passing the another variable, I can replicate the same infrastructure but for a different purpose. So if you think in terms of business use case, it's of reusability. If you think in terms of portfolio building, you can build your own project, like the awesome chatbot, which we had a demo. When people ask, we got hesitate, right? Like, how can I show the Lambda? How can I share the coding part? So then if you do this from your day one of infrastructure as code approach, you can say, hey, this is my GitHub. These are the instructions. You use your AWS credentials if you would like to do it. So the same infrastructure setup, exact replica, it's get copied just by running 3 commands: Terraform init, Terraform plan, Terraform apply, and then your AI chat is ready. And if you are building your own product, right, to as a startup, you can sell your product to end customers at ease, not interacting with the customer with just a readme document. So when it comes to module, unlike resource, again here is another block is going to be used. We use something called as module block. And how this module block is going to come handy. So if you see, it's been referred as a keyword module dot the module name and then the specific output. So it's all reference. So if you start with one use case like the resource block and then the resource specific space with a resource unique name. Same way if you want to refer that, you're going to refer it with the specific keyword. So on the first slide, you see the module security group is created. And then I'm referring the security group over here on module EC2 instance, the security group which is already created. And then the good thing here is Terraform is very well intelligent enough. Let's say here you have the security group and then the EC2 instance, right? So in that case, first the security group to be created and then the EC2 instance to be created. So based on the reference you made here, Terraform automatically knows what resources to be created first. Do I need to create the security group first or the EC2 instance? So you don't need to worry about it. Again, you can place these blocks in different files under the same folder. .tf can be named. So you can name it as sg.tf and then ec.tf and then Terraform automatically renders for you and then create the resources periodically. So this is just another example over here. So where we created the multiple modules and then we are creating a resource and how it's cross-referred to each other. So when it comes to the module part, the major key principles you want to use it, right? It's not just about automating it, but then you also need to be mindful of, are you following the best practices? The major best practices you start with is the DRY concept, which is don't repeat yourself. So whenever you are repeating the same code of block, you are going to convert it. So it's the same concept as if any coding, right? So you write a coding, and then if you're going to repeat the same logic, you would generally convert it into a functions. So something similar, the same concept would apply for the Terraform as code as well, the Infra code as well, where you are going to say, hey, don't repeat yourself. So in this case, we have two different modules, right? So one for security group and then the S3 bucket. But still, here we are doing the same repetition of value. Like for example, project is equal to Terraform modules, and in the S3 bucket also, I'm going to use the same value, which means I'm just keep on repeating the same values, which I wanted to avoid. So how can I avoid it? So already we are avoiding the replication of resource creation by templating using module. We are going further down how to avoid the mentioning of the variables again and again in multiple places. So Terraform gives you two options. One is going to be the locals and the another is going to be the variables. So the major difference when you would use locals and when you would use variables is, let's say I'm doing the Terraform plan and Terraform apply. At the runtime, if I want to modify the custom value to it, I would generally go with variables. Or if I'm hard coding it within the code level and I'm not having any plan to modify it, then I would be choosing the values of locals. Same way, if you want to add any custom validation, because as we are letting the people to pass at the custom runtime, we also need to have some validation. Is it following the proper naming convention, or is it following the proper syntax? So everything we can add validation part. Let's take an example over here, like how the variables block will look like. So as you could see, you would be starting with again the variable block, the variable name. It has type, description, the default, and the validation condition. So I have written you a QR code, like which takes you to the official documentation of Terraform, which gives you in-depth understanding of what is each parameter and how can you pass the custom variables at the runtime. And it has the more priority in terms of which one would choose at what place. So if you're interested, take a snapshot of it, and then you can have a read about it for your custom projects. So let's also talk about let's also talk about just give me a minute. So this is how you declare a variable, and then if you want to refer the specific variable declared, right? So you will go with var dot the variable name. So same thing like how you declare the module name you refer that using module dot the custom name. So it's as simple as that. All you would need to just do the practice. So there can be scenarios where you have the same template of module, same template of resource, but then you want to just create 2 or 3 number of resources. Let's say I need the same template, but I need 3 EC2 instances. I have the same template, but I need 2 S3 buckets. Can I automate it? Can I avoid the repetition of code using DRY concept? Don't repeat yourself. So Terraform is going to give you 2 approaches. One is count, and then the another approach is a for each. So when we talk about count, so in the resource block, you're going to say count equal to 3, and then you refer the count of the instance using count.index. So let's say I need 3 EC2 instances. So I would say in the resource block, count equal to 3, then it's going to create me 3 EC2 instances part. And then you have the for each, which is going to be, you can pass the custom list. Let's say if there are like 3 security group there, then per security group, I need a 3 EC2 instances to be created. So I need to iterate and then do it. So it also supports you for underscore each. So the major difference you would go with the count and for underscore each is, let's say I have a maintain of list and it can vary dynamically. So let's say I have a list 0, 1, 2, and maybe I can remove the 1 from the list and the rest of the resources should stay in that. Then I would go with for underscore each. If I have 3 resources, all I don't care like what resource is getting decommissioned, just cut off 1, then I would go with count. So you would choose logically what's the best use case for you to avoid the repetition of code and what's the best case which you use for it. As of current standard, we by default go with for underscore each for simplicity and overthinking which one to go like count and for each. But it's just let to know you that these are the options that's been available. There are certain cases like when it comes to like multiple parameters, we have seen that you might not intended to pause all the parameters at all the times. Let's say you might be saying that only for a specific condition I need to have the specific parameter. So in those conditions, this dynamic block comes pretty much handy. So it's going to create the block based on the values you are going to pass it. Let's say I have a security group and then the security group rules to be created. And based on the input from the variable, let's say open port number 80, open port number 22. So if 2 ports are in the list, then it should create 2 security group rules for opening the 2 ports. If the list contains 4 ports, then it should open the 4 security rules. So if you want to create the parameters logically, the count, because it's not technically the resource, right? It's within the same resource, but dynamically passing the parameters. So if you want to do it in that way, then this dynamic block is going to come pretty much handy for you when it comes to the infra code approach. It also has supports you the functions. So like how you do for seal or convert from uppercase to lowercase, or you do the concat, everything. So similar things, Terraform also supports you the inbuilt functions, which you can pretty much play with it. And if you want to test the functions locally on your machine, you can just insert Terraform and then say Terraform space console. That's going to enter into the cell form, and then you can try inputting the function and then see the output before implementing in your code. So there are like multiple types of functions available, like numeric, string, file concatenating, decoding, encoding. You ask it, they offer it. So again, I left you a QR code because when it comes to infra code, right, you don't memorize anything, you don't memorize syntax. The documentation is the key. So once you know where to go, how to find the information, you can easily survive the DevOps industry. The last one, which is going to be the conditional statements. So there can be scenarios, let's say you want to choose value between A and B. Let's say if the environment is prod, then I need to have the naming convention of XYZ hyphen prod. If the environment is not prod, then I may need to go with XYZ for non-prod. So you can choose simply with the condition and then with a question mark followed by the value. If it's a true condition, it's going to be take the true one. If not, it's going to take the false one. So I think I pretty much concluded like in terms of the overall things you would need to know as a basics part. Like if you covered like whatever I've been told, right? Like from creating a resource block, module block, and the syntax part, you should be like get hands-on. So hardly if you spend like 3 hours, you should be able to, get mastered in the Terraform part. So why I said 3 hours? That's the reason behind it. So whatever I have shown as the code, right? It's very pretty much due to time constraint. I try to shrink it. So all those been available as a GitHub repository. If you go through it, like it has the detailed insights in terms of like what is resource block, and then with the AWS credentials, you can spin up and try to create the resource on your own. Also, as you've been staying patiently with full cooperation, so I also have a Udemy course we launched around Terraform. It's exactly 3 hours course, right? And for as you being the lovely audience, so you can scan this code and then you can enroll it for free. So the coupon code would be like MBU Community Day, so that you spend 3 hours maybe over the weekend and then try to create some AWS resources. Uh, Go and build it, right? So it's not listening to stories. It's not listening about what is serverless. It's not just listening about answering the interview questions. It's time to go and create your portfolio, right? So what you know on your own skill sets or what services you are passionate about. Are you passionate about EC2 instance? Create a resource using Terraform using the EC2 instance. Are you passionate in networking? Create the VPC and subnets and those resources using Terraform. Are you passionate about LLM? Go and create Bedrock, Chatbot applications, Lambda as code using Terraform as infra code and share your portfolio with pride. And so that it's not just you create your portfolio, but also you let help others people to replicate in your absence also with just the README file, right? So if someone is in need of any help or you want to showcase, you want to need some more boost around it, you can tag me on LinkedIn or you can reach out to me. I'm happy to help and I'm happy to assist. So hope you got some insights around it and looking for your LinkedIn posts and tags of what you're going to build it in the coming weekends and stuff. Yeah, thanks.